The first man who laughed at Marlowe Baird did it before she had even lifted her father's hammer. "Careful with that bench," he called from the open workshop door. "Might give out before the iron does." The men standing behind him laughed so loudly that one of them nearly spilled his coffee, and Marlowe felt every sound land exactly where they meant it to. She kept her eyes on the strip of glowing iron in front of her, raised the hammer with both hands, and brought it down hard enough to make the forge ring. None of them knew that 21 days from then she could lose her home. None of them knew her dead father had left behind a secret buried somewhere inside that workshop. And none of them knew the large woman they had come to mock was about to uncover something that could ruin one of the most respected men in the valley. Stonepine sat high between two mountain ridges where the mornings smelled of wet pine, coal smoke, and cold earth, even at the end of summer. There were fewer than 200 people scattered between the settlement and the ranches beyond it, which meant everyone knew everyone else's business, or at least believed they did. For most of Marlowe Baird's 32 years, the people of Stonepine had known her as Ephraim Baird's heavy daughter. They remembered her as the broad little girl who grew into a broad young woman, then into a beautiful but undeniably obese adult, with a round face, soft brown eyes, thick dark hair, wide hips, powerful arms, and a body people seemed unable to discuss quietly. They rarely remembered that she could read a survey map faster than most men in town. They forgot that she understood numbers. They ignored the years she had spent standing beside her father while he shaped iron. And since Ephraim's death, they had apparently decided she had forgotten those things too. Marlowe struck the iron again. The laughter outside softened. She turned the glowing strip, studied the color, then returned it to the coals. "Ephraim never let her touch the serious work," one of the men said. "He let her sweep," another replied. More laughter followed. Marlowe recognized both voices. Porter Gill owned the feed store. Wesley Dern ran a small freight wagon between Stonepine and the railroad. Both men had eaten at her mother's table. Both had shaken her father's hand at church. Porter had once brought Marlowe a ribbon from Denver when she was 12. Now he leaned against the workshop door, as if her grief were entertainment. Marlowe did not look at him. The truth was that her father had allowed her to touch almost everything. He had simply done it after the customers went home. When she was 14, Ephraim had taught her to control a coal fire by color instead of heat. At 16, he taught her the difference between iron that merely looked ready and iron that truly was. By 19, she could repair wagon hardware, hinges, chains, fireplace grates, tools, knives, and broken farm equipment. Her father had told her she possessed a natural patience that could not be taught. But customers wanted to see Ephraim Baird. So when someone entered the shop, Marlowe stepped away from the anvil. Her father had hated that arrangement. He had also understood Stonepine. "People buy what makes them comfortable," he once told her. "That does not mean comfort and truth are the same thing." At the time, Marlowe had laughed. Now she understood exactly what he meant. She removed the iron from the coals and carried it toward the anvil. Porter whistled. "That's a serious hammer for a lady." Marlowe finally looked toward the door. "Then it's fortunate I'm not using it on lace." A few men stopped smiling. Porter's expression tightened. Before he could answer, Marlowe placed the heated metal against the anvil and began shaping it. The sound traveled across the yard. Hammer, turn, hammer, turn. She kept a steady rhythm, not too fast, not too slow. Her father's voice lived inside that rhythm. "Don't fight iron, Marley. Listen to it." She had not heard anyone call her Marley since the morning he died. For half a second, her vision blurred. She struck harder. 3 weeks earlier, Ephraim Baird had walked out of the house before sunrise, saying he needed to check something near the northern ridge. He had seemed distracted the previous evening. He had eaten very little. Twice, Marlowe caught him staring through the kitchen window toward the mountain road. She asked what was wrong. He said nothing. She asked again. He kissed her forehead. "Some debts aren't what they look like," he had told her. Those became the last clear words he ever spoke to her. A ranch hand found Ephraim later that afternoon near the old survey trail beneath Coldwater Ridge. His horse stood nearby. Ephraim lay on the ground beside a fallen pine. The town doctor said his heart had stopped. There were no signs of a fight. No gunshot, no broken bones, nothing that gave Marlowe a reason to question the death, until the debt notice arrived 4 days after his funeral. According to Malcolm Rook, Stonepine's wealthiest businessman, Ephraim had borrowed heavily against the Baird homestead and workshop. The debt had grown through missed payments, late fees, and a final agreement that allowed Rook to take possession of the land if payment was not made before October. Marlowe's mother nearly fainted when she heard the amount. Marlowe simply stared at the paper. Her father had never mentioned it. He had complained about money, certainly. Everyone in the mountains complained about money. The winter had been rough, orders had slowed, 2 logging camps had closed farther north. But Ephraim was careful to the point of annoyance. He recorded flour purchases in a ledger. He saved bent nails. He patched boots until they could no longer hold thread. The idea that he had quietly borrowed enough money to risk their entire property made no sense. But Malcolm Rook possessed signed documents. And Ephraim was dead. Marlowe had 21 days. So she opened the workshop. The men standing outside eventually became bored when she refused to cry. Porter Gill gave her one last smirk. "When you get tired of pretending, bring the tools to me. I'll give your mother a fair price." Marlowe looked at him. "My father paid $12 for that hammer." Porter shrugged. "I might give you 3. I'd rather bury it with him." Porter's face darkened. Then someone behind him laughed. Not at Marlowe, at Porter. Porter turned. A tall man stood several feet beyond the others, holding the reins of a dark bay horse. Ellis Wardell rarely came into Stonepine unless he needed something. He lived almost 12 miles north at a small cattle property wedged between timberland and the lower edge of Coldwater Ridge. People called him strange because he could sit through an entire supper without speaking more than 10 words. Women called him rude because he did not dance. Men called him unfriendly because he did not drink much. Marlowe had always thought Ellis simply preferred silence. He was 36, lean and strong, with weathered hands and dark hair that never seemed interested in staying where he combed it. His face had the tired, calm look of a man who spent more time watching weather than people. Porter glanced at him. "Something funny." Ellis tied his horse to the rail. $3 for Ephraim Baird's hammer. That's business. That's theft with a smile. The other men suddenly became interested in their boots. Porter pushed away from the door. "You here to buy something, Wardell?" "Yes?" From her, Ellis looked past Porter and directly at Marlowe. "If she can fix what I brought." Marlowe wiped her palms against her apron. "What is it?" Ellis crossed to his horse and untied a canvas bundle from behind the saddle. He carried it into the workshop and set it on Ephraim's old wooden table. Inside lay 2 pieces of a heavy iron bracket. Marlowe recognized the part immediately. "Snow drag assembly," Ellis nodded. "Runner bracket from the lower meadow drag. Split last winter. I had Walter Kemp weld it in the spring." Marlowe picked up the broken section. "And it split beside the repair." Ellis looked surprised. "Yesterday." Marlowe studied the metal. "He overheated it. That's what happened. He made the repair harder than the rest of the piece. That's why it cracked beside his work instead of through it." Porter snorted. "Now she's teaching blacksmithing." Marlowe ignored him. She looked at Ellis. "If I repair this the same way, it'll break again. What would you do? Replace the damaged section, reforge the corner, temper the whole piece instead of one spot. How long? Tomorrow afternoon. How much?" Marlowe hesitated. This was the first real job anyone had brought her. She knew what her father would have charged. $25. Ellis reached into his pocket and placed $2 on the table. "That's too much. If it holds, it isn't. You haven't seen whether it holds." "No." His eyes settled on hers. "But I saw the way you looked at the break." Porter muttered something and walked away. The others followed. Within a minute, the workshop yard was quiet. Marlowe stared at the 2 silver coins, then at Ellis. "You did that on purpose." "What?" "Paid me in front of them." Ellis looked toward the road. They seemed confused about whether this was a business. You could have waited. I needed the repair. You also enjoyed irritating Porter. A faint smile appeared. A little. It was the first time Marlowe had smiled since her father's funeral. It surprised her enough that she quickly looked down. Ellis tipped his hat. Tomorrow, then. Tomorrow. He walked toward his horse. Mr. Wardell. He turned. Thank you. Ellis studied her for a moment. For bringing work. For not making it charity. His expression became more serious. I don't think you need charity. Then he mounted and rode away. Marlowe stood in the doorway until the trees swallowed him. Behind her, the forge crackled. For the first time in 3 weeks, the workshop did not feel entirely haunted. That evening, Marlowe's mother sat at the kitchen table, peeling apples that were too bruised to sell. Nell Baird had aged 10 years in 3 weeks. She was 58, slight where Marlowe was broad, with pale hair turning silver around her temples. Grief had made her quieter. Sometimes Marlowe entered a room and found her mother simply holding something that had belonged to Ephraim. A glove, his coffee cup, a folded shirt. That evening, it was his pocket knife. Nell looked up as Marlowe entered. You ate? Not yet. There's stew. I'll warm it. Nell noticed the soot on Marlowe's cheek. You worked late. I got an order. Her mother blinked. An order. Ellis Wardell, snow drag bracket. A little light returned to Nell's face. How much? $2. Marlowe, he insisted. Her mother smiled faintly. Your father liked him. I know. He said Ellis never asked a tool to do work it wasn't made for. Marlowe laughed softly. That sounds like Papa. The smile faded almost as quickly as it came. Nell lowered the knife. Malcolm Rook stopped here. Marlowe's hands went still. When? This afternoon. What did he want? He said he came to offer kindness. That sounds expensive. Nell did not smile. He said he would buy the property before the deadline. He would forgive the remaining debt and give us enough money to rent rooms in town for a year. Marlowe stared at her. And you told him no. I told him I needed to speak to you. Mother. I didn't say yes. You didn't say no. Nell's eyes filled. I am scared. The anger drained from Marlowe as quickly as it had come. Nell looked down at the apple in her hands. I buried my husband, Marlowe. I wake every morning expecting to hear him splitting wood. Then I remember. I don't want to bury this place too, but I don't know if I can watch you destroy yourself trying to save it. Marlowe pulled out the chair beside her and sat. The old kitchen creaked softly around them. I'm scared too. Her mother looked at her. Marlowe swallowed. Every morning I unlock that workshop, and for 1 second I expect Papa to be inside. Every time I touch his tools, I wonder if I'm doing something wrong, and every person who laughs makes me wonder if maybe they see something I don't. Nell reached for her hand. They don't. How do you know? Because I watched your father teach you. Marlowe lowered her eyes. Nell squeezed her fingers. He didn't teach you because you were his daughter. He taught you because you were good. Marlowe felt the tears coming and hated how easily they came these days. Then why did he hide it? Nell's expression changed. He didn't hide you. He moved me away from the anvil when customers came. He was trying to keep business. That feels the same when you're the one being moved. Nell said nothing. Marlowe wiped beneath one eye. I don't want to live the rest of my life stepping away from something I'm good at, so other people can feel comfortable. Then don't. The answer came so quickly that Marlowe looked at her. Nell took a slow breath. Your father made that mistake. He knew it. Before Marlowe could ask what she meant, her mother stood and crossed toward the bedroom. She returned, carrying a small wooden box. I found this beneath his shirts. Marlowe opened it. Inside was an iron key. Not a house key, not a door key. It was larger, dark with age, and stamped with a small symbol. 3 lines meeting inside a circle. Marlowe frowned. I've seen this. Where? In the workshop. Her mother leaned closer. On what? I don't know. Marlowe turned the key in her palm. Then she remembered. The scrap bin. Her father kept pieces of old iron beside the rear wall. Broken hinges, wagon fittings, tools, bolts, plates, twisted straps. During her first day cleaning the workshop, Marlowe had noticed the same three-line symbol stamped on several pieces. At the time, she assumed it was a manufacturer's mark. Now she was not so sure. She returned to the workshop with a lantern. The mountain air had turned cold. Her breath barely showed as she crossed the dark yard. Inside, she lit 2 lamps and knelt beside the scrap pile. It took 10 minutes to find the first mark. 3 lines, 1 circle. She pulled the piece free. It was part of a thick iron plate, badly rusted along one side. Another fragment carried half the same symbol. Another had numbers beneath it, 14N. Another read 6E. Marlowe placed them on the floor. Her curiosity began to push aside her grief. She searched through more pieces. 9 carried markings. All appeared old. Some looked much older than the workshop. Then she noticed scratches on the floor beneath the scrap bin. The heavy wooden container had been moved recently. Marlowe stood. Her father rarely moved it. She tried pushing. It barely shifted. She braced both hands against the side and leaned her weight into it. The bin scraped across the floor. Behind it was a small iron door built into the lower wall. Marlowe stopped breathing. She had spent most of her life inside this workshop. She had never seen it. There was a keyhole. Her hand trembled as she pulled the key from her pocket. It fit. The lock opened with a dry click. Inside the wall cavity lay a leather tube, several folded papers, and a thin book wrapped in oilcloth. Marlowe stared. Outside, somewhere in the darkness, a branch snapped. She froze. Another sound followed. Not wind, a boot against gravel. Marlowe grabbed the lantern and moved toward the window. The yard looked empty. Beyond the fence, pine trees stood black against the moonlit slope. She waited. Nothing moved. Then a horse snorted somewhere near the road. By the time Marlowe reached the front door, she heard hoofbeats disappearing into the trees. Someone had been watching the workshop. She slept little that night. The next morning, she examined the papers in daylight. The leather tube held an old survey drawing of the Baird property and surrounding ridge. The map had been made nearly 30 years earlier, before Stonepine had more than a store, a church, and 12 houses. Several points along the property boundary were marked with the same 3-line symbol. The book was stranger. It contained drawings of iron shapes, curved bars, leaf patterns, circular plates, measurements. At first, Marlowe thought she was looking at plans for decorative fencing. Then she recognized her father's handwriting. North Post, original, south plate recovered near creek, west marker missing. Marlowe turned the page. A gate. It was unlike anything Ephraim had ever built. 2 massive doors met beneath an iron arch shaped like mountain branches. In the center, 3 lines came together within a circle, the same mark. Across the bottom, her father had written only 6 words. Put the land back together. Marlowe read the sentence 3 times. Then she heard Ellis Wardell outside. He arrived for his repair just before noon. Marlowe had completed the bracket before breakfast. Ellis examined it quietly, running his thumb along the new joint. You replaced more than I expected. It needed more. You test it. With the press. He looked at her. And? It complained. A smile tugged at his mouth. But held. Ellis set the bracket down. You were here late. Marlowe's smile disappeared. How do you know? Passed your road after midnight. Why? Looking for 2 cows that went through my north fence. You saw the light? Yes. Marlowe hesitated. Did you see anyone else? Ellis became still. Why? I heard a horse. What time? Maybe 11. I passed closer to midnight. So no. No. He studied her face. What happened? Marlowe almost lied. The old instinct told her to protect what belonged to the family. Then she remembered the footsteps. She closed the workshop door. I found something. Ellis listened while she explained the hidden compartment and the marked iron. He did not interrupt. When she finished, he examined the survey map. These lines are old. Papa wrote on them. Ellis pointed toward the ridge. That old trail runs through my upper grazing land. Do you know what the symbols mean? I've seen one. Marlowe's pulse quickened. Where? Near Coldwater Creek. An iron marker. Part of one. Can you show me? Ellis looked toward the window. Yes. They rode out that afternoon. Marlowe had not ridden far since her father's death, and the mountain road felt different without him beside her. She was a strong rider, despite what people assumed when they saw her size. Her mare, June, was a sturdy chestnut built for mountain terrain. Still, Marlowe could feel eyes following them when she and Ellis passed through the edge of Stonepine. Two women outside the mercantile whispered. One laughed. Marlowe kept riding. Ellis glanced toward them but said nothing. After the settlement disappeared, the trail narrowed. Pines crowded both sides. Coldwater Creek ran below them, flashing silver between rocks. You always this quiet? Marlowe asked. Mostly. Doesn't it get tiring? What? Having conversations with 3 words. I use 4 when necessary. She laughed. Ellis looked over. That was 4. Showing off now. He smiled. The ease of it frightened her a little. Grief had made kindness feel dangerous. Anything warm reminded her how quickly warmth could disappear. They reached the old marker near sunset. Half of it protruded from the ground beside a fallen tree. Marlowe knelt. 3 lines inside a circle. Below it were numbers. 14N. She had a piece at the workshop marked exactly the same. This was broken, she whispered. Ellis crouched beside her. Looks cut. Marlowe touched the edge. He was right. This was not weather damage. A tool had severed it. The broken top had been carried away. Her father possessed that piece. Marlowe looked toward the ridge. What was he doing out here? Ellis did not answer. Then Marlowe saw something carved into the nearby tree. EB, her father's initials. Below them was a date. 3 days before his death. Marlowe's stomach tightened. Ellis rose slowly. He was checking the boundary. Why? I don't know. Marlowe looked toward the trail above them. The mountain suddenly felt less empty than it had moments before. Someone knew he was doing it. Ellis watched the trees. Maybe. Someone watched my workshop last night. I know. She turned sharply. What? Ellis pointed uphill. Fresh hoof marks. They followed a narrow track through the trees until it joined the main road. The prints were too common to identify, but someone had indeed been there. Ellis looked at Marlowe. You should lock the workshop. I do. Keep the house locked too. You think I'm in danger? His answer came slowly. I think somebody wanted to know what you were doing. Fear moved coldly through her chest. Ellis noticed. I'm not trying to scare you. Well, you're doing an excellent job. I can stay near the workshop tonight. No. Marlowe. I said no. He stopped. She immediately regretted the sharpness in her voice. I'm sorry. You don't need to be. Yes, I do. She looked back at the cut marker. I have spent 3 weeks listening to people tell me what I cannot do. I cannot run the forge. I cannot pay the debt. I cannot live alone with Mother. I cannot understand Papa's papers. If you begin sleeping outside my workshop because I'm a frightened woman, by tomorrow half the valley will decide you're saving me. Ellis considered that. Then he nodded. All right. Marlowe had expected an argument. That's it? You said no. She stared. Ellis adjusted the reins. But I am going to ride past your road on my way home. That is almost the same thing. No. I need salt. Your ranch is north. Store is south. And my house is east. Long way to salt. Marlowe shook her head. You're terrible at lying. I know. They rode home as twilight moved across the valley. The next few days brought something Marlowe had not expected. Work. Ellis told one rancher the snow bracket held. That rancher brought a broken chain. Then a widow from outside Stonepine asked Marlowe to repair the iron latch on her cook stove. A miner brought 3 damaged drill heads. A farmer arrived with 2 cracked hinges. Marlowe worked from sunrise until evening. Every dollar mattered. Every completed repair felt like an answer to the laughter. But the town had not changed. Some customers entered through the side door because they did not want to be seen hiring her. One man placed a broken shovel on the workbench and said, "Your father would have done it straighter." Marlowe repaired it perfectly. He examined the edge. "That'll do." She held out her hand. 60 cents. Ephraim charged 50. "Then you should have brought it last month." The man stared. Marlowe waited. He paid 60. She smiled after he left. Small victories became precious. Then, without warning, the orders began disappearing. A rancher who promised to bring 12 horseshoes never came. A logging crew cancelled a large repair. The widow with the cook stove returned looking embarrassed. "My sister says I shouldn't have brought it here." "Why?" The woman looked toward the road. "People are saying your repairs aren't safe." "Who?" "I don't know." "You used the stove?" "Yes." "Did the latch fail?" "No." "Then who said it was unsafe?" The woman could not answer. By the end of the week, Marlowe understood. Someone was spreading rumors. She discovered which rumor when Porter Gill walked past the workshop with 2 customers. "Ask her where she gets her iron," he said loudly. "Wouldn't surprise me if half those parts were stolen from abandoned claims." Marlowe stepped outside. "Porter." He turned. "If you have something to accuse me of, come closer." Porter smiled. "Did I accuse you? You're standing 20 feet away because you're afraid to." His companions exchanged uncomfortable looks. Porter's smile faded. "Folks are talking. Folks like you. I'd watch that mouth." Marlowe felt the old pain rising. Not fear. Humiliation. The same humiliation she had swallowed since childhood. "Why?" she asked. Porter frowned. "Why what? Why does it bother you so much that I can do this?" He laughed. "It doesn't." "Yes, it does. Yes, it does." "Marlowe, you came here the first morning just to watch me fail. You offered $3 for my father's hammer. Now that people are bringing work, suddenly my repairs are dangerous." Porter's face reddened. "You think you're Ephraim because you wear his apron." The words hit harder than Marlowe expected. Porter saw it. That made him crueler. "You aren't him," he said. "Everybody knows it." Marlowe stared at him. "No." Her voice was quiet. "I'm not." Porter smirked. Marlowe stepped closer. "But this workshop still belongs to a Baird." She turned and walked inside before he could see the tears forming. She closed the door. Then she leaned against it. For a long moment, she could not move. Her father's apron suddenly felt too heavy. She pressed both hands against her face. The worst insults were never the ones about her body. She had heard those too many times. Too heavy, too wide, too much woman. Those words hurt, but they had scars waiting for them. The words about her father reached somewhere unprotected. "You think you're Ephraim." Marlowe lowered herself onto the stool beside the forge. "I don't," she whispered. The empty workshop did not answer. "I know I'm not you." Her voice cracked. "I just don't know what else to do." She cried quietly for several minutes. Then the rear door opened. Marlowe jumped. Ellis stopped. He had clearly heard enough to understand. His expression changed. Marlowe wiped her cheeks angrily. "You knock on front doors." "I did. I didn't hear." "I know." She looked away. "What do you need?" "Nothing." "Then why are you here?" "Because Porter walked past me smiling." That almost made her laugh. Almost. Ellis set a paper sack on the table. "Your mother asked me to bring flour from the store." Marlowe took a breath. "So now my mother is recruiting you." "She paid me." "How much?" "Pie." "That sounds like her." Ellis looked at the tools. Orders slowing. "You heard? I hear things. I thought you didn't talk. Other people do enough for everybody." Marlowe rubbed her palms against her skirt. "They're saying my work is unsafe. Mine isn't." "No." "Carter's chain isn't." "No." "Hensley's hinges? Fine. Then let them talk. That's easy when the bank isn't waiting for your home." Ellis became quiet. Marlowe regretted the bitterness. She walked toward the workbench. "I have 13 days. How far are you?" "Not close." "What about Rook?" "What about him? Any chance the debt is wrong?" Marlowe looked at the hidden papers. "I think it is." She showed Ellis the drawings again. Over several evenings, Marlowe began assembling the pieces of her father's strange design. The old iron fragments fit parts of the gate drawing exactly. Not physically at first. Conceptually. The marked plates corresponded with points on the old property survey. Her father had collected original boundary markers. Some had been cut, others removed. One appeared deliberately hammered flat. Marlowe searched his ledger. Several pages near the middle had been torn away. The remaining entries showed small payments to Malcolm Rook's office, but the amounts did not match the debt statement. One night, Nell sat beside Marlowe at the kitchen table, as papers covered almost every inch of wood. "Your father met Rook twice before he died," she said. Marlowe looked up. "You knew?" "I knew they argued." "About what?" "He wouldn't tell me." "Mother," I asked. Nell's eyes filled with the helplessness of someone reliving a conversation too late. "He said Malcolm had made a mistake." I asked what kind. "He said one that was about to become expensive." Marlowe looked down at the survey. "Why didn't you tell me? I did not understand it." "Did Papa mention the markers?" "No. The gate." Nell shook her head. Then she frowned. "He did ask me something strange." "What?" "Whether I remembered your grandfather helping make the first survey posts." Marlowe went still. Her grandfather had been a blacksmith too. Samuel Baird built the original forge nearly 40 years earlier. "What did you say?" "I told him I remembered hearing the story. That was all." Marlowe looked toward the workshop window. The truth began forming slowly. The Baird family had forged the original iron boundary markers. Ephraim recognized them. If someone had moved or replaced those markers, her father would have known. The next morning, Marlowe visited the county clerk's small office beside the courthouse. A young clerk named Jonas Pike helped her find the old property book. The original Baird claim included 38 additional acres along the northern ridge. The newer map did not. Those acres now appeared as part of land controlled by Malcolm Rook. Marlowe stared at the record. When did this change? Jonas examined the pages. 12 years ago. Who filed it? He hesitated. Rook Land and Freight. Was my father notified? There should be a signature. They found it. Ephraim Baird. Marlowe's heart sank. Then she looked closer. The signature was wrong. Not obviously, but Marlowe had seen her father write his name thousands of times. Ephraim always joined the B and A in Baird. On this document, they were separate. She looked at Jonas. This isn't his signature. Jonas's face changed. Be careful saying that. I am careful. You understand what you're accusing someone of. I understand what I'm looking at. Jonas lowered his voice. Malcolm Rook practically built half this settlement. He owns half of it. That too. Can I copy this? Jonas glanced toward the door. Yes. Marlowe returned home with more fear than certainty. That afternoon, someone came to see her. Clara Madsen had been Marlowe's closest friend as a girl. They grew apart after Clara married and moved into town, but she still visited Nell. Clara entered the workshop carrying a basket. I brought bread, Marlowe smiled. Mother is inside. I came for you. That surprised her. Clara looked around the shop. You're really doing it? Trying. My husband says people are talking. I know. He says you're making some sort of big iron piece. Marlowe froze. Who told him? Clara shrugged. I don't know. Very few people knew about the gate. Nell, Ellis, and Clara. Marlowe had shown Clara part of the drawing 2 evenings earlier. Did you tell him? Clara looked uncomfortable. He's my husband. That wasn't my question. Clara lowered her eyes. I mentioned it. What exactly? That your father left plans. Marlowe felt a cold pressure in her chest. Did you mention the survey markers? Clara did not answer quickly enough. Clara, he asked why you were collecting old iron. You told him. I didn't think. Your husband works for Rook. He keeps freight records. He works for Rook. Clara's eyes filled. I'm sorry. Marlowe stepped back. How long? What? How long have you been telling him what I'm doing? I haven't been spying. How long? Only what you told me. That is still telling him. Clara reached for her. Marlowe. Marlowe pulled away. The hurt was almost childish in its depth. Clara had known her before the insults became sharp, before men began looking at her body as if it were a public discussion, before every dressmaker in Stonepine charged extra for cloth. Clara had once punched a boy for calling Marlowe a cow. Now she had carried Marlowe's secret into Malcolm Rook's office without meaning to. Maybe that made it worse. You should go. I didn't know it mattered. That is the problem. Marlowe, please. Clara left crying. Marlowe did not. Not until the workshop door closed. Then she sat on the floor beside the scrap iron and cried into both hands. She was tired of being strong in rooms where no one else had to be. That evening, Ellis found her staring at the gate plans. She told them. He knew immediately who Marlowe meant. Clara. Yes. What did Rook learn? Enough. Ellis studied the drawing. Then we move faster. Marlowe looked at him. We. He nodded toward the heavy iron pieces. You can't lift all this alone. There it was. The thing Marlowe had feared. She stiffened. I can lift more than most men in this town. I know. Then why say it? Because nobody can build a 12-foot gate alone. Marlowe stared. Ellis continued. You want me gone? No. You want me to build it? No. Then tell me what needs holding. Something inside her softened. He had understood. Marlowe pointed toward one of the long bars. That needs holding. Ellis rolled up his sleeves. For the next 6 days, the gate grew. Marlowe designed the final arrangement herself. She heated the recovered iron, reshaped old scraps, preserved every original stamp, and incorporated the survey numbers into curling mountain patterns. Ellis never touched the hammer unless she handed it to him. He lifted, held, turned, fetched coal, pumped the bellows, made coffee so bad Marlowe accused him of using horseshoe water. At night, they ate supper with Nell. For a few hours at a time, the house sounded almost alive again. One evening, after Nell went to bed, Marlowe and Ellis sat outside the workshop, watching the last light disappear behind Coldwater Ridge. Ellis looked at her hands. Burn. Marlowe glanced down. A red mark crossed her wrist. Small one. He pulled a tin of salve from his pocket. You carry that around? I own cows. That explains many things, but not this. Hands. She held out her wrist. Ellis carefully spread the salve across the burn. His fingers were rough. His touch was not. Marlowe watched him. Can I ask you something? Yes. Why don't you ever say anything about my size? Ellis paused. What should I say? She almost laughed. I don't know. Everyone else finds something. He looked genuinely confused. You know you're large. Yes. I know you're large. Yes. What information would I be adding? Marlowe laughed despite herself. Ellis smiled. Then his expression became serious. Does it hurt? What? When they say things. She looked toward the darkening mountains. Sometimes. Even when you pretend it doesn't. Especially then. Ellis nodded. Marlowe swallowed. The strange part is, I don't hate my body. I hate what people decide about me because of it. They see me walking toward a horse and think I can't ride. They see me near an anvil and think I'm weak. They see me eating supper and watch my plate. Ellis looked down. I noticed that. At church? Yes. She smiled sadly. I stopped going to supper after services. I wondered. I got tired of being hungry while pretending I wasn't. Ellis's jaw tightened. Marlowe glanced at him. Don't look like that. Like what? Like you want to fight the whole town. I don't. You do. Maybe Porter. She laughed. Then silence settled between them. A comfortable silence. Ellis looked toward her. You are beautiful. Marlowe stopped breathing. He said it without drama, without trying to rescue the moment, simply as if he were identifying weather. She looked at him. You don't have to say that, because I told you people insult me. I know. Then why say it now? Because you asked why I never mentioned your size. That isn't an answer. It is part of one. He looked directly into her eyes. I see your size. I also see your face when you're concentrating. I see the way you push your hair back with your wrist when your hands are dirty. I see you smile at your mother when you're worried so she won't know. I see you walk into that workshop every morning even when you're scared. Marlowe's throat tightened. Ellis continued quietly. So yes, I know you are a large woman. He paused. And I think you are beautiful. Marlowe looked away because tears had suddenly filled her eyes. That was more than 4 words. Special occasion. She laughed through the tears. The next morning, everything broke. Literally. Marlowe entered the workshop before sunrise and knew immediately something was wrong. Cold air moved through the rear room. A window stood open. She ran toward the gate. One entire side lay twisted on the floor. 2 completed iron branches had been bent. The center ring was split. Several original survey plates were scattered across the dirt. For a second, Marlowe could not understand what she was seeing. Then she noticed hammer marks. Someone had struck the finished welds. Again, until they cracked. No. She dropped to her knees. No, no, no. Her hands moved across the pieces. 3 days. The debt was due in 3 days. The public autumn gathering was in 2. She had planned to unveil the gate there because county representatives would be present. If the marked pieces matched the original survey record publicly, Rook would have difficulty burying the evidence. Now half the gate was ruined. Marlowe picked up the center ring. The iron split across her father's symbol. Something inside her collapsed. She had survived his funeral. Porter's laughter. Rook's threats. Cancelled orders. Clara's betrayal. She had swallowed every humiliation because there was always another task waiting. Now there was nothing to strike, nothing to calculate, nothing to hold inside. Marlowe sat on the dirty workshop floor, holding the broken ring against her chest, and began to cry. Not quietly, not gracefully. She cried like someone who had been refusing to for a month. Her shoulders shook, her breath caught. She pressed her forehead against the cold iron. "I tried," the words came out broken. "I tried, Papa." She closed her eyes. "I'm sorry." She thought of her mother packing boxes. The workshop sold. Rook walking across the property. Porter buying the hammer for $3. The image hurt so badly that Marlowe curled around the broken piece as if she could protect it. She did not hear Ellis enter. He found her on the floor. For once, Ellis Wardell had no quiet answer. He simply knelt beside her. Marlowe looked up. "It's gone." "No. Look at it." I can't rebuild this in 2 days." Ellis picked up one broken branch. "You built it once." "I had a week. You know the shape now." Marlowe shook her head. "You don't understand." "I do." "No, you don't." Her voice rang against the walls. Ellis did not flinch. Marlowe stood too quickly, wiping her face. "I am tired of everyone telling me I can do impossible things because they don't have to be the one doing them." Ellis remained quiet. "I have worked until my hands bleed." "I know. I haven't slept." "I know. My friend betrayed me. Half the town thinks I'm a joke. My father is dead. My mother is terrified. And now somebody walked into my workshop and destroyed the only thing that might save us." Her voice broke. "So please, do not tell me I can do it, because you want me to feel better." Ellis stood. "All right." Marlowe stared at him. He placed the broken iron on the workbench. "I won't." Silence. Then Ellis looked around the workshop. "I'll tell you what I know." Marlowe said nothing. "You have 2 days." She wiped her eyes. "Yes. You have most of the original pieces." "Yes. You have enough scrap." "Maybe. You have 2 hands." She almost snapped at him. Then he lifted his own. "And these." Marlowe swallowed. Ellis stepped closer. "I am not going to build your gate." She stared. "I am not going to finish your father's work." He pointed toward the anvil. "You are." His voice softened. "But you do not have to carry every piece alone." Marlowe looked at the wreckage. For a long time neither spoke. Then she took off her coat. Ellis nodded toward the forge. "Fire?" Marlowe breathed in. "Fire." They worked 31 hours with only short breaks. Nell brought food. Ellis slept for 90 minutes against a sack of coal, while Marlowe reheated the center ring. Marlowe slept sitting upright for less than 2 hours, while Ellis kept the fire alive. She rebuilt the damaged branches. She reforged the ring. She strengthened the joints. She changed part of the design because she no longer had time to recreate everything exactly, and that change saved them. While fitting 2 old plates near the center, Marlowe noticed the numbers formed a sequence when read according to the gate drawing. 14 mun, 6E, 22S, 9W. They were not random property marks. They were directions. Marlowe pulled out the old survey. She followed the bearings. All 4 lines crossed at one place, the abandoned spring house near the original north boundary. She and Ellis rode there at dawn. The spring house had partially collapsed years earlier. Behind a loose foundation stone, Marlowe found a rusted metal box. Inside were the missing pages from her father's ledger and a letter. Marlowe recognized his handwriting before she unfolded it. "Marley, if you are reading this, I was not able to finish what I started. Malcolm Rook altered the northern property line years ago using a false signature and replaced 3 of the original markers your grandfather forged. I discovered it when he tried to use the changed boundary as security against the workshop debt. The amount he claims I owe is not the amount I borrowed. He intends to take the homestead and the ridge beyond it. The original markers carry Samuel Baird's maker's stamp and the survey numbers filed in the first county record. I recovered what I could. The gate was meant to hold them together, so no man could quietly bury one piece again. Do not fight Malcolm in the dark. Make people look." Marlowe stopped reading. Her tears fell onto the paper. Ellis stood beside her. "There's more," she continued. "I should have put your name on the workshop sign years ago. I told myself I was protecting the business. The truth is, I was afraid the town would punish you for being better than men who could not bear it. That was my cowardice, not yours. You were never helping me in that forge. We were working together. If I do not get the chance to tell you, know that I was proud of the woman you became, long before anyone else had sense enough to see her. Your father." Marlowe lowered the letter. For several seconds she made no sound. Then she pressed it against her chest. Ellis looked away, giving her privacy even while standing beside her. "My whole life," she whispered, "I thought he was ashamed." Ellis shook his head. "He was afraid. That doesn't give me those years back." "No." Marlowe closed her eyes. "But it gives me this." She looked at the letter. "Yes. The public gathering took place the following afternoon in the open field beside Stonepine's courthouse. Nearly everyone came. Tables filled with pies, preserves, quilts, vegetables, tools, tack, and late-season produce surrounded the square. Malcolm Rook stood near the courthouse steps, speaking with the mayor and 2 county officials when a wagon rolled into the field. Conversation faded. Ellis drove. Marlowe sat beside him. Behind them stood the gate. Even unfinished against a ranch entrance, it was breathtaking. 12 feet wide, black iron branches curved upward like mountain pines bending into wind. Old discarded wagon bands became leaves. Broken horseshoes formed small arcs along the lower frame. Bent tools, rusted straps, and forgotten metal had been reforged into something elegant. At the center sat the great circular mark, 3 lines, 1 circle. The recovered survey plates surrounded it. People moved closer. Porter Gill stared. Clara stood near the mercantile with tears in her eyes. Malcolm Rook stopped speaking. Marlowe climbed down from the wagon. Someone laughed nervously. "Well," a woman whispered, "she certainly used enough iron." Another voice answered, "It's beautiful." Marlowe heard both. For once, only one mattered. Ellis helped lower the gate from the wagon, but Marlowe directed every movement. They secured it upright between 2 temporary posts. The county surveyor stepped forward. "What exactly are we looking at, Mrs. Baird?" Marlowe faced the crowd. Her hands trembled. She wished her father were there. Then she remembered his words. "Do not fight Malcolm in the dark. Make people look." So she did. "These pieces belonged to Stonepine before most of us did." She touched the center plate. "My grandfather forged the original survey markers used when the northern claims were first recorded. Every marker carried his stamp." She pointed. 3 lines inside a circle. The surveyor moved closer. Marlowe continued. "My father discovered that several markers along our property had been cut out and replaced. He recovered the original pieces." Malcolm Rook stepped forward. "This is nonsense." Marlowe looked at him. "Then you shouldn't be worried." A murmur moved through the crowd. Rook's jaw tightened. The county official raised a hand. "Let her finish." Marlowe displayed the original survey, then the newer record. Then the false signature. Finally, she opened her father's missing ledger pages. The debt Malcolm Rook claims my father owed does not match my father's payment record. Rook laughed. A dead man's notes against signed contracts? Marlowe nodded. That would be difficult. Rook smiled. Exactly. Which is why my father hid copies of your receipts. The smile disappeared. Marlowe removed 3 folded slips from the ledger. Each carried the stamp of Rookland and Freight. Each showed payments not credited on the debt statement. People began whispering. The county official took the receipts. Rook's face changed. This proves nothing about the boundary. The surveyor had already begun comparing numbers on the gate plates to the oldest county book. He looked up. It proves something. Silence spread. These marker numbers match the original survey. Rook stepped toward him. You cannot establish where those pieces came from. No, Marlowe said. But you can establish that my grandfather made them. She pointed to the maker's stamp. And you can establish that the newer boundary was filed using a signature my father did not write. That is your opinion. A voice came from the crowd. No. Clara Madsen stepped forward. Marlowe stared. Clara's husband stood 20 feet behind her, looking pale. Clara held a book. My husband keeps freight records for Mr. Rook. Rook went white. Clara. She ignored him. He brought this home last night. Her husband finally stepped forward. Fear showed clearly on his face. I should have said something years ago. Rook pointed at him. You understand you are finished in this town. The man swallowed. Maybe. He looked at Marlowe. But those marker replacements came through your freight yard. I found the invoice. He handed the book to the county official. You ordered 3 blank survey posts 12 years ago. The crowd went completely silent. Marlowe looked at Clara. Clara was crying. I'm sorry, she whispered. Marlowe did not answer. Not yet. The county officials spent nearly an hour examining records. No dramatic arrest followed. No one dragged Malcolm Rook away. The truth arrived in a quieter and more devastating form. His debt claim was suspended. The foreclosure was stopped. The altered boundary was placed under formal review. The county official ordered the original Baird property protected until the matter was resolved. Within weeks, the false filing was confirmed. Rook lost his claim to the northern acreage. The inflated debt collapsed under examination of the missing receipts. He still owned businesses in Stonepine. He still had money. But something more valuable disappeared that afternoon: his reputation. People stopped lowering their voices around him. Men who once hurried to shake his hand suddenly remembered other places they needed to be. Porter Gill avoided Marlowe's eyes. Marlowe stood beside the iron gate as people gathered around it. The compliments came slowly at first, then constantly. Never seen work like that. You really forged all those branches. Could you build one smaller? My wife wants a railing for the porch. We need new hinges at the church. Marlowe listened. Part of her wanted to laugh. Another part wanted to scream. These were people who had watched Porter humiliate her. People who had cancelled orders. People who crossed the street rather than enter her workshop. Now they spoke as if they had simply been waiting for proof. Porter finally approached. He cleared his throat. That is fine work. Marlowe looked at him. Thank you. I suppose I was hard on you. You were cruel. Porter shifted. Well, people say things. Yes. I didn't mean all of it. You meant it when you said it. His face reddened. Marlowe did not raise her voice. That made it worse. Porter looked toward the gate. I might have some work for you. No. He blinked. What? I'm booked. You don't even know what I need. I know who it's for. Porter stared. Marlowe smiled politely. My father's hammer still isn't for sale. Porter walked away. Ellis had heard every word. He leaned toward her. $3. Marlowe laughed. Never forgiving that. I hope not. Clara approached next. Her eyes were swollen. For a moment, neither woman spoke. I hurt you, Clara said. Yes. I'm sorry. Marlowe looked at the friend she once knew. I believe you. Clara's face brightened slightly. That doesn't mean I trust you again. The brightness faded. Marlowe continued gently. Maybe someday. Clara nodded. That's more than I deserve. No. Marlowe looked toward Clara's husband. You did something wrong. Then you did something right. Both are true. Clara wiped her eyes. I missed you. Marlowe's throat tightened. I missed you too. They did not hug. Not that day. Some things deserved time. By the first snow, the Baird workshop had more orders than Marlowe could finish alone. She hired a 17-year-old girl named Beth Rowan, whose father insisted she had no useful skills. Beth proved him wrong in less than a week. Marlowe put a new sign above the workshop. Baird Ironwork. Below it, in smaller letters, she added something her father should have added years earlier. Marlowe Baird, craftswoman. Her mother cried when she saw it. Marlowe cried too. The finished mountain gate was installed at the entrance to the homestead. Travelers sometimes stopped just to look. Marlowe left the old survey plates inside it. Not because she needed proof anymore, because the gate belonged to the story of the land. Scrap became evidence. Evidence became art, and art became the thing that saved them. One cold evening in December, Marlowe closed the workshop as snow began falling through the pines. Ellis stood beside his horse outside. You've been standing there 10 minutes. 11. Why? Thinking. That sounds serious. It is. Marlowe crossed her arms. Snow caught in her dark hair. Ellis looked unusually nervous. That made Marlowe nervous too. What? He reached into his coat. Marlowe's heart stumbled. Then he produced a broken gate hinge. She stared at it. Ellis looked at the hinge, then at her. I practiced this differently. Marlowe began laughing. Ellis shook his head. Terrible start. Possibly the worst. I can try again, please. He put the hinge away, then stepped closer. I don't want to rescue you. Marlowe's laughter softened. I know. I don't want you to need me. I know. I think I would like you to choose me anyway. Her smile disappeared. Ellis swallowed. I've spent most of my life being comfortable alone. Then you opened that workshop. Marlowe's eyes filled. He continued. Now I find myself riding 12 miles because I need salt. She laughed softly through the tears. And flour. And flour. And repairs. Many repairs. You break an unusual amount of equipment. I may have exaggerated one or two. Marlowe shook her head. Ellis reached for her hand. Choose me if you want me here. His voice was quiet. If you don't, I'll still believe in you. That was the moment Marlowe understood why she loved him. Not because he had stood between her and the town. He had not. Not because he had solved the mystery. He had not. Not because he carried what she could not. He carried what no person should have to carry alone. There was a difference. Marlowe stepped closer. I choose you, Ellis exhaled. Good. That's all? I had a longer speech. What happened? Forgot it. She laughed. Then he kissed her beneath the falling snow. It was not a dramatic kiss. No crowd watched. No music played. Her mother was inside, pretending not to look through the curtain. It was simply warm, steady, real. Much like Ellis, much like the life Marlowe had fought to keep. By spring, Malcolm Rook sold 2 of his businesses and left Stonepine. People invented different reasons. Marlowe never cared which was true. Porter Gill eventually stopped making comments about her body. Not because he became kinder, because nobody laughed anymore. That mattered. Not as much as Marlowe once imagined, but it mattered. The deeper victory was quieter. Women began bringing daughters to the workshop. Some came to watch, some came to learn. A widow from the next valley ordered iron shelves. A ranch owner asked Marlowe to design a winter cattle gate. The church hired her for railings. A hotel in the railroad town ordered decorative ironwork after hearing about the mountain gate. Money returned to the Baird household slowly, then steadily. The debt vanished. The roof was repaired. Nell bought a new stove. Marlowe purchased better bellows for the forge and kept her father's old ones hanging on the wall. She also kept his letter inside the hidden compartment. Sometimes she read it. For a long time, the sentence that hurt most was the one about his fear. Eventually, another sentence mattered more. You were never helping me in that forge. We were working together. Years later, children in Stonepine no longer knew why the great gate at the Baird homestead contained rusty old survey plates. They only knew people came from other valleys to see it. They knew Marlowe Baird had made it. They knew she was large because anyone with eyes could see she was. But somehow, over time, that became one fact among many, instead of the entire definition of her life. She was large. She was beautiful. She was stubborn. She laughed loudly. She burned biscuits because she forgot them whenever she was drawing new designs. She loved winter mornings. She hated weak coffee. She could repair almost anything made of iron, and she had built a life that no one could quietly move, erase, or claim. Sometimes newcomers to Stonepine heard the old version of the story. They heard that an obese woman inherited a failing forge and somehow got lucky. They heard that a cowboy helped her. They heard that Malcolm Rook made a mistake. The people who had actually been there knew better. Luck had very little to do with it. Ellis had stood beside her, but he had never stood in front of her. And Malcolm Rook had not made a mistake. He had made a calculation. He looked at a grieving widow and her heavy daughter and decided neither woman would be strong enough to challenge him. He looked at Marlowe's body and thought he understood her limits. So did Porter. So did half the valley. That was their mistake. On the 10th anniversary of the gate's completion, Marlowe stood beneath it, while Ellis repaired a loose fence board nearby. Her mother sat on the porch wrapped in a blanket, older now but peaceful. The workshop behind them rang with the sound of two young apprentices working at separate anvils. Marlowe placed her hand against the center ring. The same 3 lines still met inside the circle. The iron was cold beneath her palm. Ellis looked over. "You thinking about him?" Marlowe nodded. "Sometimes I wonder what Papa would say." Ellis considered it. "About the business?" "About all of it." Ellis drove another nail. "He'd probably complain about your coal bill." Marlowe laughed. "That sounds right." Then she looked toward the workshop. For a moment, she could almost see Ephraim inside. Not as he looked at the end. Not tired, not worried. Younger, standing beside the forge, waiting for her to take the hammer. Marlowe smiled. "I think he'd like the sign." Ellis looked at it. "So do I." The mountain wind moved through the iron branches overhead. Once, those pieces had been discarded. Broken, bent, called useless. Marlowe understood them better than anyone. Nothing became worthless simply because someone failed to see what it could become. The town had learned that about iron. Eventually, it learned it about her. And Marlowe Baird never forgot the people who laughed outside her workshop on that first morning. She simply stopped needing them to be ashamed. Their silence had once felt like the victory she wanted. Years later, she understood that the greater victory was waking every morning in the home they said she would lose, walking beneath the gate they said she could never build, entering the workshop they said she could never run, and spending her days doing work she loved beside people who no longer asked whether a woman like her belonged there. She did. She always had.